and welcome back to our fashion how-to series. In this video I'm going to show you how to apply curved facings. On this neckline you can see that we've got a curved facing that's been notched on the inside on the seam allowance, and you can see the nice neat finish on the outside. So again, I have my facing, which you can see is curved, and then I have a corresponding piece of interfacing. And just as before, onto the scrap paper to save your ironing board, and making sure that the gluey dots are going to be in contact with the back of your work, and putting a piece of scrap paper over the top to protect your iron, blasting the steam from the iron and using plenty of heat and pressure to make sure that there's a good bond between the interfacing and your work. And remember, we can't have the interfacing peeling off the back of the facing during laundering, so we just need to make sure there's good contact. So we're just going to remove the work, and you can see actually we've got little bits of glue that have ended up on this paper which could be thrown away, and it's left our ironing surface nice and clean for the next person. So before we attach the facing, the curved facing, to the garment, we'll just need to overlock this outside edge. The inside edge is going to be attached into the seam, so we don't need to overlock that edge. So just keep your eye on the blade. Remember that you are going round in a curve rather than a straight line. So remember, you can stop and start as you go, but just make sure that you do have a nice smooth curve. Just guiding the work as you go. And remember to make a chain of threads at the end. Cut with a pair of scissors, never tear or break threads, and turn off the machine. Okay, so now we are ready to sew our curved facing onto our curved part of the garment. And so with right sides together, we're going to pin and stitch a 1 centimetre seam allowance. And remember to use a tape measure just to check your measurements. Even if you think you know what 1 centimetre seam allowance looks like, it's always best to use a tape measure as well. So now we've pinned, we're ready to start stitching. So we'll just make sure that the machine is correctly threaded. Turn on the machine, let it warm up, knee lift, raises the presser foot, put the work under the presser foot and release. Hold onto these threads so that they don't tangle under the work when you start stitching. And then we're going to just back tack and take the pins out, put them into your pin pot or pin cushion as you go. And because we're on a curve, we can stop and start just to make sure we're just positioning the work correctly so that we can get a nice curved seam. And back tack. And just make sure that the pulley's in the upright position. Knee lift, raises the presser foot, and we just pull the work to one side, and then use a pair of scissors and clip the threads. Before we press the facing to the back of the work, we'll need to clip notches into this curved edge. And if you want to remind yourself about how to do this, you can refer to the video where we do the curved concave seam, and if you click on this link you should be able to get there. And we're just going to clip little notches every couple of centimetres. Let's put another one here. And I'm also going to just trim that seam a little bit. You don't want to cut it too close to the stitching, but it'll just give a little less bulk into that seam. So just as we did with the straight facing, we are going to now press the seam allowance towards the facing on this sample. So we're going to turn it over, so that's the inside of our garment sample. And because this is curved, we're going to have to do this a little bit at a time, using the pointed part of the iron to just give us a little bit more control over what we're doing. Okay, so because we've also got the notches clipped into the seam allowance, that's going to just help us a little bit more. Okay, so I'm just going to take the iron, blast the steam, and then gently, bit by bit, press that seam allowance, just continuing to pull the facing and using the pointed part of the iron to press that up. And what we are going to do now is, just as we did with the straight facing, we're going to now understitch onto the facing, and as we do so we'll be stitching through the seam allowance at the same time. Obviously it's a bit more tricky because it's on a curve, and we just want to keep to that kind of 2 millimetres away from the original seam. So if you're not sure what 2 millimetres looks like, just mark it with a pin just to gauge it. Okay, so we just want to make sure that now that we just work the machine just gently and smoothly so that we get a nice curve. And we're just going to start with a back tack just to secure the stitches. And then we can take the pin out and just so as we did before, but obviously we just need to stop and start just so that we're coping with that curve and that we don't get any nasty little pleats, and we keep to a nice curve. And back tack to finish. Just make sure the pulley's in the upright position, knee lift raises the presser foot, and we're just going to pull the work away from the machine. And then what we'll do is press the facing to the underside of the garment, and you'll see that we'll have a nice neat edge. So you've understitched on the facing, and we're just going to take the facing to the inside of the garment, just rolling it slightly so that we can see a little bit of the outside of the garment on the inside, and we're just going to give that a press. We'll blast the steam if necessary. So here we have a curved facing that gives a lovely neat finish to your work. In the next video I'm going to show you how to apply a concealed zip.